welcome back to another video. My name is Kizzy, and if you didn't know, this is my booktube channel. So here we talk about books. So today I have a slightly different video, as I normally talk about the wonderful genre that is fantasy, but we're expanding ourselves today and we are doing something a little bit different, and we're going for classics today. I'm not gonna lie, it's probably more for my benefit than any of you guys, but I think some people might be interested because I like to watch these kind of things. But I kind of want to catalogue my Penguin English Library Classics collection that I have. It's quite small, it's definitely not the largest collection that anyone has ever had, but it's more than one book, so it's bigger than others. I thought I'd catalogue it kind of just today, just to see what it is, and then in the future when I look back I can say, oh, I only had that many books then, or I only had those books. I don't know, it's pretty pointless probably for most people. But I would say I am a little bit of a book collector. I'm not the biggest book collector in the world, sadly, because money don't grow on trees. But no, I do collect books that are special to me and books that give me enjoyment. So these do give me enjoyment because they are goddamn gorgeous. So I'm excited to share them with you. I'm not gonna lie, these probably were what originally got me into reading classics when I was about 15, because before then I hadn't really got any interested in them, but in a bookshop they just caught my eye and I started picking them up and started getting more interested in the stories and actually what they were about and kind of the different world that classics are. They are typically harder to read, a lot of people don't get in with them or get on with them. I'm gonna say that's true, a lot of classics I don't actually enjoy, but funnily enough what I really enjoy about them is learning more about them. So at uni I study English literature, and a lot of the things that I study I really don't like when I read them because there's just like a disconnection between them. But when I go and sit in the lectures and I sit in the seminars and we actually discuss them and we get more into detail about the context, the author, what they were trying to do with these books and these different passages, actually they become some of my favourite books. So there is definitely a different kind of feel that you get from classics and a different mindset that you have to have going into them. I think for me anyway, I have to be prepared to do a little bit more research around classics and just take my time with them and really think about what they're doing and that kind of stuff. So I haven't read all of these, but I read most of them. Two of them I will just put pictures up here because they are in York, so that's where I go to uni, so I don't have them in physical form with me here, but they are still part of my collection, so we're going to put them in the vlog. So shall we begin? Should we do smallest to largest? We'll start with the smallest anyway and we'll end with the largest and then we'll put the other ones in between. So the smallest one I have is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr Hyde. This also has the short story The Bottle Imp by Robert Louis Stevenson. So this, I think Dr. Jekyll and Mr Hyde is only 75 pages and then the Bottle and the Imp is like 20 pages, it's very short. This is actually on my Owl's TBR, but I bought this, or I didn't actually buy it, I gifted this ages ago, and I was meant to read it when I was reading like Frankenstein and like that kind of thing with my A-levels, I believe, because it was meant to be kind of, you know, contextual referencing and all that kind of thing. I never did, but we're going to read it this month. So this follows a doctor who has a split personality disorder, I believe, and he kind of splits into two characters, Dr. Jekyll and Mr Hyde, and it was written in the 1700s, I want to say. No, a lot later than that. 100 years out, but it's okay. This was first published in 1886, so it's a Victorian novel. Oh my god, I'm gonna be spouting so much crap because I actually don't know my dates and stuff. Let me see what period 1886 is. Yeah, that was Victorians. Oh, I got it right, okay. So this is a Victorian novel, published as a shilling shocker in 1886. Robert Louis Stevenson's dark psychological fantasy gave birth to the popular idea of the split personality. Set in a hellish fog-bound London, the story of outwardly respectable Dr. Jekyll, who unleashes his deepest cruelties and most murderous instincts when he is transformed into sinister Edward Hyde. It is a gothic masterpiece and a chilling exploration of humanity's basest capacity of evil. So yeah, definitely deals with themes of evil and the kind of inner devil that we all have and stuff like that. So I'm actually excited to get into that. We'll find out in my Owls vlog how it goes. Number two, I'll continue with the same author. I don't have the book with me because it was book I read for university, but it's Treasure Island and The Ebb Tide by Robert Louis Stevenson as well, same author. But Treasure Island, I'm sure you know, it's about pirates and finding treasure on islands, and then The Ebb Tide is kind of very similar. I'm not gonna lie, I can't really remember it now because I did struggle to get through that. I found it actually quite dry, quite dull. Treasure Island, I'm sure you've all heard of it anyway. It's one of his most famous books anyway, so check it out if you want to. So the next book I have is Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. So Thomas Hardy is one of my mum's favourite authors, I think, from this period. She recommended this to me a long time ago and I've still not read it. So I think I started it. A lot of these classics I started and then never finished. This is, I think, about a farmer. Ooh, it sounds a bit raunchy. That's not what I expected when I read the blurb. Hardy's powerful novel of swift sexual passion and slow-burning loyalty centres on Bathsheba Everdeen, a proud working woman whose life is complicated by 3 different men: respectful farmer Baldwood, seductive Sergeant Troy, and devoted Gabriel, making her the object of scandal and betrayal. Dun, dun, dun. Vividly portraying the superstitions and traditions of a small rural community far from the madding crowd shows the precarious position of a woman in a man's world. Again, that sounds actually quite interesting. Don't know why I haven't read it. I don't think I've ever read the blurb, so I never really actually wanted to read it. A lot of these books I did just buy because the covers, which is really bad. We wouldn't recommend it, but it actually sounds quite good, so that might have to be, that might have to go on a TBR soon. I'll let you know how this goes because I'm going to read that soon. That sounds interesting. Okay, so the next book I have is on a TBR. It's a year-long TBR for the classics community that Lucy Priory is hosting or organising. So she does a lot of classics on her channel, so if you do love classics, you probably already know who she is, but if not, definitely go check her out. So this is Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. It's one of my favourites. I think I just really like that dark pink with the dark cover. Like, it's gorgeous. So I love it. There we go. This follows 2 sisters. I do know what this is about. I haven't read it, but I do know what it's about. This follows 2 sisters. One is elder and the sensible one, and then the other one is younger and kind of more flighty and more goes on the, like, her emotions a little bit more, I think. And it's just about them finding love and the kind of the conflicts of it and everything like that, because that's pretty much what every single Jane Austen's about, but in different ways. So I'm excited to get through this. I think it will just be a really lovely, cosy read to read, and yes, excited. So the next book I have is another Jane Austen, and that is Persuasion by Jane Austen. So this is quite a small one. I've apparently read quite a lot of it, if these plane tickets and train tickets are anything to do with. Don't remember what it's about, so we're probably gonna have to reread that. It sounds a little bit like Emma, like an element of Emma. This tells the story of Anne Elliot, who, persuaded to break off her engagement to the man she loves because he was not successful enough, has never forgotten him. When he returns, he brings with him a tantalising second chance of happiness. So again, just another comforting read that sounds lovely jubbly. I feel like I'm always in the mood to read classics a lot more in winter time. I don't know, I just feel like they're not a summer read for some reason, but that's just me. But there we go. So I've got one more Jane Austen here, and I have read this. This is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Obviously I've read this. Who has not read this that enjoys classics? Probably a lot of people, but it's fine. So if you didn't know, how could you not? This follows Lizzie and Jane, who are sisters. They fall in love, and well, they don't fall in love straight away. Spoiler alert, sorry. But that's kind of a given with Jane Austen. So this follows mainly Lizzie Bennet, who is the eldest sister or second eldest sister of a sister of like 5 or 6 people, daughters, all daughters. And obviously in a society at this moment, they couldn't inherit their dad's wealth, so they need to marry someone that will be able to support them. And Jane, her elder sister, falls in love with Mr Bingley, who is like a little puppy dog. He's lovely. They fall in love, they're perfect, but he has a best friend who is slightly more sinister, slightly more judgmental or prejudiced, and he doesn't let Bingley kind of fall in love with Jane as much as he probably wants to, and that kind of throws a bit of turmoil in there, but it's just lovely, watch it. Me, personally, I'm a fan of the BBC adaptation. I think you're going to be a fan of this whatever you do first, so if you read the book first, watch the BBC adaptation first, or watch the film first, that's the one that you're gonna love more. Me, I grew up on the Pride and Prejudice retelling or BBC adaptation. That's very true to this book, like it's pretty much set by set the same thing. So this just felt like reading the adaptation to me. So yeah, it was lovely, a lovely comfort read. Okay, so the next two books I read because these are what I did my kind of big project on for A-level English. It's a bit tattered. This was in school books and school bags a lot, so it's a bit gross, but this is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. If you only know the Frankenstein of today's culture or kind of general knowledge, Frankenstein is not the monster, Frankenstein is the doctor, and he creates Frankenstein's monster, or Frankenstein's creature as it referred to in here. He is a doctor who is obsessed with science and producing he's just obsessed with life and what makes life and that kind of thing, and he does end up creating a human being, or not human being, a monster from dead parts of people's bodies, and it's kind of the repercussions of that. So the themes in here are kind of life, what makes a person who they are. Is it their physical body? Is it their upbringing? Is it their parents? Their influences around them, society? All that kind of questions are pulled into here. I've studied this a lot in my time, so I kind of know a little bit about it in the context. So it is very fascinating to read. I've kind of overdone it on the studying aspect, but Mary Shelley was a very influential and interesting character, very influential character of the Victorian period, and would definitely recommend if you're interested in that kind of thing and those questions. And then I compared this in my analysis to The Picture Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Now this is one of my favourite classics, so if you haven't read this, I would highly recommend it. It's very short, it's not long at all, but the questions of morality, what makes a person good, what makes a person bad, vanity, self-obsession, all that kind of questions I kind of put in this, and it's just a very interesting book, and it's very interesting to study as well. Like, there's a reason these classics are studied a lot, because I think they become more interesting a lot of the time when you actually delve a bit deeper into them than just the kind of surface reading. So this follows a man called Dorian Gray, who is very beautiful, and everyone kind of looks at him like this beautiful creature and kind of praises him, and he's grown up with this kind of air around him that he knows he's kind of well looked at and like loved because of his beauty. So he doesn't have that much, he doesn't really care for others very much. Like, he falls in love with a girl and then it all goes wrong, and then he doesn't really care about the consequences of her, and he places a wish on this picture that it would age in the place of himself. This painting ages, but he stays beautiful and youthful, and it's kind of the corruption of that and how that affects his soul. Yeah, very interesting if you want to give it a read. The next book I've read all but one of the next books, so the next few books. Oh, I missed an Austen, how could I forget? So one of the Austens I do have at uni is Emma by Jane Austen, because I had to look at this for, I don't know, something to do with uni. But I have read this. This was lovely. I would definitely recommend Emma. It follows a girl who is kind of a bit naive, a bit lovable. She's just a bit bubbly and wants to help everyone, but kind of doesn't do it successfully all the time. And one of her big things is that she likes to set people up. And it's basically Victorian speed dating or matchmaking for the Victorian era. So she tries to set up all the people around her. Some of them are successful, some of them not so much. And then obviously she herself is fallen victim to the love. And it's just a super lovely thing to read, so if you want to read that I think is my favourite Austen that I've read so far. Obviously I've only read like 2 or 3, so I think I did prefer reading that to Pride and Prejudice, just because Pride and Prejudice, it was just for me like reading the TV series, so that's always a little bit harder I think to get into a book, because you're like, oh, I could just be reading the TV series right now. But Emma I think is lovely, and I would definitely recommend it. So the next book I have is another one I read for A-level, and that is Jane Eyre by... Oh no, I didn't read this. Scrap that. Rewind. Okay. This book, Jane Eyre, is a book I read before A-level to get context for the kind of things that I was studying, and it's quite a long book. Like, for a classic it's 550 pages long, so for a classic that's quite long. That's one of the longest classics I've ever read, although Villette by Charlotte Bronte. I think it's by Charlotte Bronte actually as well. That was a long one too. I had to read that for uni. Also would recommend. I wrote my essay on that, but I don't have that in this edition. So this follows Jane Eyre, who is I think she's an orphan. I read this a long time ago, so I can't really fully remember. But she doesn't have any family really, so she goes to be what are they called? She goes to be the teacher. What are they called in the Victorian period when they do that? I don't know, I can't remember. But she goes to be the teacher of this man called Rochester. It's a gothic Victorian tale. I really enjoyed it. It was the biggest classic I had to kind of plough through, but it wasn't too bad. Like, I just think because I hadn't read many books of that size yet, that's why it kind of took me a little bit longer to get through. Classics in general take me a bit longer to read anyway. Yeah, it's just very interesting, and again another one that you should really study. I haven't studied this, but I would really be interested in it just as a bypass. It's mentioned quite a lot in my literature, so I did do a Victorian module and it was obviously mentioned quite a lot, and we do quite a lot of books that deal with criticism that use the figure of Rochester's ex-wife, because she was a black woman, and in the Victorian period it's kind of interesting to see how they dealt with that and how they were presented, because obviously they had very different ideas of race at that time. And yeah, it's just very interesting to study and kind of find out more about that period through this book. It's quite eye-opening and I would definitely recommend it. So the next book I did study for A-level, and this is Charlotte Bronte's sister, Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. So this follows Cathy and Heathcliff. I'm sure you've all heard of the story of Cathy and Heathcliff, or at least heard the song. It's very different to my picture or my imaginations of what it was going to be like, because I just thought it was going to be Cathy and Heathcliff, kind of a bit of turmoil romance and all that, but it's not. It follows Cathy and Heathcliff probably half of it, and then their children through the second half of it. And it's a very cyclical, it's another interesting one to read and study because it's a kind of cyclical thing, so it's actually quite a positive book, even though some might disagree with the main romance aspect of it. So Cathy and Heathcliff's romance might not seem initially on the surface a very positive ending, but I think looking at the whole book in a whole, it is actually meant to show a positive side. It gives you a positive ending where it might have been a struggle in the society at the time for it to be a positive ending. So it figures a way out to do that in the non-traditional sense. So I think it's a great book. You should definitely read it. The second to last book, we've only got 2 more books and then we're done. But the second to last book is North to South by Elizabeth Gaskell. This is a Industrial Revolution book, or a book that focuses on the Industrial Revolution on the Victorian period. It gives a very big insight into what it was like to live during that time. That's one of the main reasons I like reading classics, is because it does give you that insight into what it was during that period. So this follows a Victorian lady called Margaret Hale, and her kind of moving from a rural country estate. I think her father was the priest or some sort of minister person at the local church, and then they kind of fall of misfortune and they move to the city instead, and it's her kind of experience this whole industrial city. Obviously it was a big industrial revolution, and it's her kind of getting to grips with this whole new city where they have fog everywhere, it's dirty, it's not very pleasant. She's used to all the fresh countryside, but this is completely the opposite of what she's used to, and she ends up meeting this mill owner called John Thornton, and romance unravels. Go. Suggestions there. I'll read the blurb. Elizabeth Gaskell's compassionate, richly dramatic novel features one of the most originally and full-rounded female characters in Victorian fiction, Margaret Hale. It shows how, forced to move from the countryside of an industrial northern town, she develops a passionate sense of social justice and a turbulent relationship with mill owner John Thornton. North and South depicts a young woman discovering herself in a nuanced portrayal of what divides people and what brings them together. So yeah, I think that's a good summary. So it is about kind of the society and what society is made up of and what kind of brings it all together and everything like that. Would recommend. The final book, and the most hefty crafty one I have in my collection is Middlemarch by George Eliot. It is 920 pages. 920 pages, that's a big boy. That's big. So yeah, I haven't read it unfortunately. It is meant to be really good. I'm really interested in it because obviously George Eliot is such a controversial character, or like a nuanced character for the time period. Obviously it is a woman writing under a male pseudonym, so similar to the Brontes did the same. I don't know why George Eliot is kept as George Eliot. Don't know about that. I'll have to research that. I'll read you the blurb because I don't know what it's actually about. Middlemarch is a moving story of men and women longing to do the right thing but making bad decisions. Among them is Dorothea Brooke, who wants to improve the world but finds her idealism crushed by her unhappy marriage to the aged scholar Casaubon and Dr. Lygate, whose shallow spendthrift wife threatens his dreams of medical progress. Described by Virginia Woolf as one of the few English novels written for grown-up people, Middlemarch's panoramic sweep ranges over the whole of human existence: art, faith, science, politics and love, yet in its heart are real, flawed people searching for contentment. So it sounds like it deals with a lot. I mean, we got art, faith, science, politics and love all in this one bad boy. So I think it would definitely be interesting. I have to read it probably over a couple of months, just taking it little bits at a time. It is massive, isn't it? So, fun time. So there we go. There's all my books. They are absolutely gorgeous. Did I show you the spines? Let me gather them all together. If you look, all the spines kind of match. So they're all stripy, but they're all orange in them. I just think, oh, they just look so nice. Book porn if you haven't seen it before. So yeah, that's my collection as of today, the 21st of April 2020. That's my collection. I'm hoping to grow it because there are some classics I've read that I don't have the actual book for, so I will, if I do purchase them, I will purchase them in this edition because who wouldn't want them in that? And I think classics are just a nice thing to collect because they are classic, they're not going to go out of style. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you liked the persona or me or anything that I did on this video, make sure to subscribe and I shall see you in another video very soon.